AskReddit. AskReddit. Redditors who spend a lot of time in isolated places. What's the creepiest or most mysterious thing you've seen? I live on a compound by myself. I know it sounds wacko-y, but it's really my tiny home, workshop, and a couple of other buildings for food/equipment storage and a guest room. One bad snowstorm knocked my area rook, so I decided to hunker in for the long haul. I spent almost 2 weeks without leaving. 3 days in, I get woken up to a knock at the door. I get up to answer it, and halfway there, I realize the only way this guy could knock on my door is if he broke the lock. So I grab my shotgun and ask him through the door who he is and what he wants. Guy says nothing and keeps banging. I go out the back door and sneak around front, and I see a man who is on the ground, covered in blood, and shouting, albeit quietly, for help. Turns out he was driving and crashed and dragged himself 5 miles down the road until he came to my place. By then he realized that I forgot to lock the bottom part of the gate and weaseled in. Luckily he survived. Throwaway time. My brother and I decided to go on a sailing trip. We are both Marines, so we don't get to see each other often. We made camp on a small island with a decently sized patch of trees. At 2 AM so we heard a boat coming towards us. Our fire had died down, but was still visible. This was a remote area, so it felt off that someone would be coming to our campsite. We grabbed our weapons and quietly went into the tree line. Some scraggly looking guy started rifling through our shit, then started walking toward our boat with a rope. I decided to confront him, and my brother stayed back. To alert this stranger to my presence, I pumped my shotgun and asked him what the hell he was doing in our camp. Before this guy could say anything, I heard another guy in the darkness beyond the fire scream for me to drop my gun or he would kill me. Before I could react, my brother opened fire on the second guy, and I shot the first guy. I retreated back to the tree line, and my brother asked if I was good. I told him I was alright. We did a perimeter sweep, gathered our shit, and destroyed/sank their boat. When we got back to shore, we contacted the state police and told them what happened. They detained us until our story could be cleared, then released us. So glad we decided to go together, or there's a good chance one of us could have been killed. Happened in high school. I was at a summer camp that separated boys from the girls. We would normally sleep in separate cabins. However, this being a nice night, our counselors decided it would be nice to camp outside. Being overly testosterone high schoolers given new freedom of the outdoors, we decided to separate from our supervision and beeline for the girls' campsite. Upon successfully reaching their site and being dumbfounded at what to do, we decided that throwing miscellaneous items into the fire, creating subsequent explosions, would be a good icebreaker. Unfortunately, due to our brilliance, we were quickly brought back to our camp and separated from the girls. Not being discouraged, we decided to regroup and try again. As we began to leave for their site again, we heard an extremely loud bang, as if from a high caliber rifle. The sound was followed by another bang, followed by silence. We all became paralyzed, unsure what to do. Was it from the girls' site? We were too afraid to find out. We could see a flashlight in the distance mulling around the area. I only remember lying quietly, barely able to sleep, joking with fellow campers who would get shot first if that bang was indeed from a gun. The next morning we woke up, alive and very confused to what had happened. I actually only found out what had happened when I got home from camp. A man had shot his ex at a house right by the campsite we were staying that night. What stood out to me the most, other than aforementioned, was an interview with a neighbor who didn't call the police right away because she figured the sound was from some stupid kids blowing up things at a campsite. Some friends and I would take my truck up in the mountains during the winter time and tow someone on a tube across the snow. We'd drop the tailgate in my old long bed Ford, and a few guys would sit in the back with one of those bazillion candlelight spotlights. When I was driving, it'd be fun to make really wide turns in the dark, so the person on the tube didn't have the luxury of headlights or taillights to somewhat illuminate their trail. The person in the bed of the truck with the spotlight would be funny and shine the light clear off to the side, so it was pitch black if you were on the tube. One particular winter night a snowstorm was rolling in, so we headed up to the usual spot, and it was dark that night. A friend was on the tube. I was driving watching my mirrors as I'd swing him wide enough he had little light to see anything. The guy with the spotlight shined the light clear to the side of the truck, and as I checked my mirror and I made eye contact with a guy dressed in jeans, a red plaid shirt, and a blaze orange ball cap. As we made eye contact I lost all control of my body for probably only 5 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. I stopped the truck and turned it around and asked the guys if they saw him. They all said no, so I flipped the truck around and turned on the high beams and they shined the spotlight all over. I got out and looked for footprints in the fresh snow and saw nothing. That night we went back home and I told my dad about the weird experience and he didn't think anything of it. A week later on the news the police reported finding a body in the area close to where we were and asked for any tips. My old man convinced me to call the police and tell them we were up in the area and saw that guy. I called and the police said they'd send an investigator over. He came over to the house. I recalled the same experience saying it happened 7 days earlier. As soon as I said that, the investigator asked me, "You are sure on your date?" Which I was positive, and he showed me a picture of the body they found wearing the same red plaid shirt and blaze orange ball cap. He informed me the body had been on the mountain for at least 1 month, so I must have just seen something. Turns out it was a man who suffered from some mental handicaps and committed suicide on the mountain 1 month prior to when I saw him. I was by myself, working on a railroad track in a swamp in Georgia in the middle of the night. I heard some grunting in the woods, so I froze up. Then a fucking pig the size of a Volkswagen came running out of the woods in my direction. It ran right past me, and I hightailed it to my truck. Called it a night after that. The thing that gets me sometimes is the sounds. Sometimes you'll just hear some animal, and it sounds like nothing you've ever heard before, and you can't imagine it being anything like any animal you've ever even heard of. That combined with pitch blackness of the woods can creep you the fuck out. Worst one was a couple months ago sitting under a tarp, because it was raining a bit. Small fire going a bit away with no other light. Heard a sound with a rhythm you would expect from a bird, but with a deeper sound than any bird ever. Sound continues to repeat every couple seconds, and slowly gets louder, like it's getting closer, then stops. Never heard it again. But those couple minutes, until I convinced myself it was gone, I was creeped the fuck out, no doubt. Got stalked by a mountain lion on a hike. It was late at night. We're in a group of about 5 and didn't have enough flashlights to go around, so we gave one to the person in front and one to me in back. I felt like I was being watched, and so I real quick flashed the light around and turned my head. Saw a pair of green eyes attached to a body slink back off the trail a little bit. Our light wasn't powerful enough to get a super good bead on it, but every 30 seconds or so thereafter, I would turn around and flash the light up the trail. Probably saw something about 75% of my turnarounds. It followed us for probably 1/2 hour, until we were 10 minutes from the cars. The people I was hiking with didn't notice, and mountain lions don't often jump large groups of adults, but I wasn't really about statistically. We are probably fine at that point. No one else noticed, and I didn't say a word while it was following us. Really didn't want to run the risk of a panic. Someone I worked with was surveying for birds in a relatively remote forest in Canada. They stumbled across a campsite that looked like it was about 5 to 10 years old. The tent was collapsed, but everything else looked like it was into shade. There was a cloth line up, dishes on the ground, and a few other items scattered around. Everything was dirty and covered in leaves, but there was no evidence of anything bad happening. She noped the hell out of there before checking the tent. To this day, I'm morbidly curious about what the hell happened at that campsite. So this happened 3 years ago, when I was living with my parents in Meteets, Wyoming. Super small and secluded. It was Halloween and my parents decorated the house and we expected about 3 to 4 kids to show up as the house is about a mile from a subdivision and parents usually drive their kids. At 8 I took in the chair with candy because I figured no one else would be coming around. I'm in the basement where there are no windows and very little sound can get out, and it's about 11. All the lights upstairs are shut off because I'm going to bed. I hear a knock at the side door, which no one ever knocks at. I go upstairs and the floodlight, which usually turns on automatically, wasn't on. So I flipped on the other light that lights up the basketball hoop area. There's a person in one of those old man masks that have the crazy hair just standing there. He is just looking at the house. He sprints to the back where the patio is. I hear loud banging on the back windows. Honestly, the loudest kicking I've ever heard. I rush over, and the person is just staring. Then he runs away, and I don't hear anything for 5 minutes or so. Then I start hearing the knob to the main door being forcefully jiggled back and forth. I ran upstairs to the bedroom and went to the crawl space in the attic. I immediately dialed 911. This was the first time I ever dialed 911, so I don't know what I was expecting, but the operator didn't seem to be very shocked or wanting to send out a car very quickly. I remember repeating my address like 12 times and the lady kept saying, "Calm down, sir. She wants me to stay on the line." But I'm afraid if the guy got in, he would know where I was because of my voice. I hang up and I can hear the knob being slammed like he had a hammer or something. I'm having a full-on panic attack and I'm wheezing trying to get air. Then I hear the side door, original door, being kicked super hard. At this point I'm shaking so bad the dust from the floorboards is flying up in the air. I hear a window smash and I immediately know he's going to get in. I hold my breath, which makes the wheezing worse. I'm going to die. I'm listening to hear footsteps or anything. Nothing. The actual amount of time I spent up there was around 16 minutes. I swear it was an hour. An officer showed up and pounded on the door. I ran downstairs and flipped open the door. I told him everything as well as the backup sheriffs that got there. They all kept saying a friend was probably just trying to scare me. I had no friends in Wyoming. None. They looked around the house and wrote down some shit, but nothing really happened. They left and I drove behind them to Cody, Wyoming, and got a hotel room. I still can't sleep without all the lights on and a .45 on my dresser.